If you compare the Arab world to the rest of all other regions of the world in terms of governance indicators, in most governance indicators, the Arab world is at the bottom or near the bottom of the list. There is no question that political reform is stagnating in the Arab world. There is not one single Arab country today that can be seen as adopting a serious and a sustained political reform process. And it's a question that is really leaving the Arab world behind almost everybody else. There have been different reasons given for why the Arab world is in such a state of stagnation. Probably all of them are true. Some cite the colonialism past in the Arab world, the Arab-Israeli conflict and its effect on that I talked about being an impediment and an excuse for not moving forward. All post-independence secular parties in the Arab world have really not given the issue of reform any attention and focused almost all their attention on the Arab-Israeli conflict. With 1967 and the victory of Israel over Arab states, the secular sort of discourse lost credibility, and the Islamists started being on the rise because of this. Oil has often been also cited as a reason. With oil, many Arab states do not have any taxation to speak of, and the famous question of no taxation, no representation. So there have been a variety of reasons why the Arab world is where it is today. But looking at all these reasons, there is no excuse for not moving forward when almost every other region in the world have been able to deal with its own challenges and overcome them. The United Nations Development Program came up in the years 2002 to 2005 with a number of very important reports done by Arabs, written by Arabs, that identified the major challenges facing the Arab world today. And they listed them as three. Governance and political diversity is one, women empowerment is the other, and the knowledge gap that exists between the Arab world and the rest of the world. I think these really capture most, if not all, of the challenges facing the Arab world today. How do we move forward? Movement cannot be done through a revolutionary approach. Certainly, to achieve democracy, you need a sustained process that might take decades. But I think that such an evolutionary process needs to start at least, and there needs to be a sustained, gradual, but serious reform process that would ensure, all the pillars of democracy, not just free elections, but also an independent judiciary, freedom of the press, human rights, all the needed pillars of democracy. It is sad to say that no Arab country today has embarked on such a process in a serious manner. There have been ad hoc programs here and there to advance certain causes, but no holistic program that looks at all these elements and attempts to advance them in a serious manner. The Arab world today has two major forces, and two major forces only. Either an entrenched political establishment that rules without a system of checks and balances, or the Islamist opposition, basically which is calling for reform, but which is often armed, militant, and where its commitment to political diversity at all times is suspect at best. There does not exist in the Arab world today a mobilized and effective third force, which is both peaceful and reformist, which is as passionate about peace, both domestic and regional peace, as it is on reform and the need to have a serious political reform process. Whereas on one hand, the political establishment has been very resistant to change, citing different reasons, but in my view, the main reason is because they will lose their privileges. The forces of change in the Arab world have largely now come from the Islamists, who provide their own set of challenges because people are also sort of concerned about losing political diversity if they come to power and then deny others the right to organize. Forces for change that call for political diversity at all times and for peaceful means are very isolated in the Arab world, not mobilized, tend to be elitist, and therefore do not yet have mobilized large constituencies that would result in effective change taking place. You need a middle class that is active. You need freedom for civil society to work in the Arab world. You need the establishment of political parties that can start working on the ground and offering alternatives to either the political establishments or the Islamists. Of course, in most cases, governments stand against the development of such an environment. So political party laws are very restrictive in the Arab world. Civil society cannot operate without the consent of the government. But the development of a middle class and civil society can only take place over time. And it has to be both a bottom-up process as well as a top-down process. If we do not have these two processes, then I'm afraid that the gap between the government and the public in the Arab world is really widening. Certain countries have put forward models and initiatives that were very important for the rest of the region. You've had, for example, Morocco that came up in 2003 with a new civil status law that did a lot to bridge the gender discrimination gap. You've had countries, Lebanon, Tunis, Jordan, that worked on the education aspect of the problem and the need for a better quality of education in the Arab world. You have countries like Yemen who worked on human rights and the need to push forward the idea of civil society organizations working in freedom. But it is difficult to point out to a country that has looked at all these aspects and made serious advances on all these fronts in a sustained manner. Economic development both has a positive as well as a negative effect. We have seen the effect of oil, which has not only been positive. Yes, on one hand, it has resulted in high growth rates and high rates of development in many parts of the Arab world. It has also resulted in maybe a slowing of the pace of reform in the region because of what we have talked about before. But economic development without political reform has its limits. In the end, you cannot bring in foreign investments without an independent judiciary, for example, that ensures that when disputes happen, people, are given a fair trial. You cannot fight corruption without a free press, or an independent judiciary, or a strong parliament. So when we talk about economic development in isolation of political reform, then that by itself will not result in an overall better quality in the Arab world. Certainly, the Arab-Israeli conflict has played a major role in slowing down the pace of reform in the Arab world. One, because it has served as an impediment where a lot of resources have been channeled to the Arab-Israeli conflict and away from development and domestic issues. It has not resulted, of course, in a resolution of the conflict, nor in addressing these other issues as well. But it has also been used as an excuse. Many Arab governments found this a convenient excuse for not moving forward on reform. In the 50s, we had a very famous slogan that no voice should rise above that of liberation. In the end, we did not achieve liberation and did not achieve reform as well. No political reform process can be sustained in a serious manner without a resolution of the Arab-Israeli conflict. The other side also is true, that the Arab world cannot wait for the resolution of the Arab-Israeli conflict before it embarks on a gradual and serious political reform process. These have to go in tandem, and this is something that is not happening at the time. Any serious and widely accepted political reform process has, by definition, to be homegrown. You cannot talk about any process that is imposed from the outside. At the same time, certainly the international community can help by supporting the moderate discourse, but doing that in a partnership model rather than by any imposition from the outside. The Bush administration's attempts, for example, to push reform in the region have largely failed precisely because they were seen as an imposition from the outside without the consent of the region. Having said that, I think that many countries in the region have used this homegrown argument as an excuse to do nothing on reform. So you need to find a happy medium between a homegrown process and between dialogue and collaboration with the international community to support such a process. I think there have been different models employed, some that have worked better than others. I do not like to use even the word push democracy because that does not work, and it has been tried before through such initiatives as the Greater Middle East Initiative and others that have not worked. There are other models that may have worked better. The Europeans tried the Barcelona process, the partnership agreements in the Arab world, where you have jointly agreed on programs that would push political reform forward. I think the trick is to ensure that when such programs are devised, that you're not just doing things in an ad hoc manner or in a way that does not result collectively in a serious political reform process. So one should not just look at individual programs, but at how these individual programs then come together to form or to put the region on a track that would lead to democratization, that would lead to democracy in few decades.